Move into the BW Fusion side, and I want to introduce the BW Fusion team that showed up today. First, we'll start with Corey Mesher in the white hat. He is our DSM, so to speak, our business guy. And then in the back is Buck Brazil, and he is our area agronomist. So kind of similar to the Pioneer team where we have Greg and Casey, we have Corey and Buck. And then we also have Matt Bornhorst, and he is regional sales manager. And then Dusty Rich is U.S. sales manager.
The shortest sales manager in BW history. Matt covers our entire western region, and then I'm VP of sales.
Yeah, so it's really nice to have all these guys here today to support us. And then Bodie Kitchel has been with BW Fusion since the inception. He has recently decided to step away from full-time BW Fusion, and he's doing some consulting with BW Fusion still, but also has offered his services to a few agencies such as myself and our team. And so we're calling him a remote agronomist. He lives in Indiana and farms there with his family, and we're lucky to have him to help us, to help you guys, because it's my personal biggest fear is to cost you guys money by doing something wrong. So he's the artist behind the scenes, and we're trying to bring you guys a lot of value, a lot of savings, and a lot of increased ROI, not only on the products that we want to try to promote, but just from a solid agronomic foundation as well. It's very important to us as a team to do this right and do it right the first time. So any feedback is always welcome. Derek's taken the bull by the horns on this deal and is doing a great job. And we've written 10,000 acres of prescriptions so far. Just for anhydrous probably at least. We've got more to do. We're capable of writing planting prescriptions, lime, every nutrient of dry fertilizer. That's the goal, is to become increasingly incrementally efficient with all this stuff that we're doing, because everything costs way too much. So I want to make sure we're efficient. We're going to take some steps. Bodie's going to go through how we're going to become even more efficient by protecting a certain piece of the puzzle, and I won't step on his feet by that, but we are getting lunch, so we've called an audible. We're working on lunch. We invite you guys to stay. Something else I forgot, but I'll turn it over to Bodie. Oh, ask questions. He is easily offendable, but just ask him anyway. I've asked him to be tough today. So, interrupt him, ask questions. If you guys gotta leave, stay, no big deal. Informal, we're here for you guys. But everybody will get more, because if you're thinking the question, probably 5 or 6 other guys thinking the same thing. So go ahead, raise your hand, blurt it out, throw something at him, it's all good. So, Bodie Kitchel, thanks for coming, Bodie. Traveled from Indiana. He's away from his family, and we sure appreciate his time. And it's been a lot of fun to work with over the last 4 or 5 years. So, thanks, Bodie.
Likewise, appreciate it. Obviously, Brad and I aren't quite on the exact same wavelength yet, because I could have saved him lunch. I'm going to make this presentation really short. You guys all heard Jared speak. The key to driving profitability on your farm is sign up with Jared Creed for crop insurance. I don't know that there's much more to add to it. I was sitting back there hanging on every word that he was talking about, right? No different than you guys. You read about it, you hear about it. I'm going to use social media. There's good and bad with everything in life, right? The truth always lies somewhere in the middle, is what I say. You look on social media, and man, the attitudes of farms on social media today is just, it's not great, right? And we all know why. We're not going to dwell on that because I'm not the kind of person that wants to see the negative in everything. I want to try to find the positive. So I'm sitting back there listening to Jared's presentation, and I'm thinking, man, you know, it used to be just a crop insurance decision is do I want to cover it? Do I want to carry it? Do I not want to carry it, right? Then it became, well, do I want 85% or do I want 80%? Well, how much money in premium? And then today, you know, to hear a guy that I've heard him speak before, but it was more on the grain marketing side where, you know, it used to be that they would say that I can make you more money in grain marketing than anything else that you do, right? For him to say, you know, the most important thing that he wants to focus on is crop insurance and understanding all of the programs. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about soil fertility and we're going to talk about efficiency, because I think that as you heard some of the things that Casey talked about at the beginning, where the cloudy days, the sunny days, and you know, we had a crop that maybe in June, July, and I was talking to Brad, you know, looked really good, really high expectations. I wouldn't say that your crop was a disaster, far from it, right? But maybe expectations weren't met with how the crop looked in the growing season, right? To Jared's conversation of how do we get efficient, how do we leverage these programs, and this is a conversation that honestly for the last 7 years, 8 years, this has been my focus. I know I've been here before, I've given some presentations. As always, stop at any point. I have a whiteboard. I may go to it, I may not go to it. If you have questions, I know there's a lot of you that have soil tests within the last year or so working with these guys. If there's things on there that you have questions about, stop, ask. If there's things, something that I say, something that I cover that you don't understand, that it doesn't make sense, or it's the first time you've heard it, please stop. As Brad said, these presentations go way better the more interactive they are, because we all have a chance to learn. I have a chance to learn from you guys. You have a chance to learn from your peers. So the key to driving profitability on your farm is, and I probably have to turn, nope, why is this not? Sorry, it's a little slow. And I leave this blank for just a second because I want to challenge you to think about some things. Yet the metric isn't measured on 95% of soil samples taken today. Okay? The key to driving efficiency and profitability, regaining that in your farm, really comes down to one thing, but yet on 95% of the soil samples taken in the United States today, nobody knows it. They've never seen it. It's a foreign term, it's a foreign object, they don't know what it is, they don't know what it means. What about this? Maybe you guys have seen this before, but for every dollar that we spend on these nutrients, this is how much we're getting back. Now, what I'm about to bring up is a somewhat painful subject for some of you, and that's Nebraska football, right?
Yeah.
Now, I brought this up in a couple of presentations ago, 2 days ago, and I heard a guy say, yeah, they suck, but at least we got Nebraska volleyball. Touche.
We got that.
Touche. My uncle played football at Purdue during the Drew Brees era, so Purdue football was pretty fun. Purdue football is a dumpster fire at best, but at least we have Purdue basketball, right?
Yeah.
So, the reason I bring up Nebraska football is let's say that you have the opportunity to take $100,000 and go to Vegas, and these are the odds that you get to bet on Nebraska football. Who's standing in line to put $100,000 with these odds? And the answer is probably none of you. But now think about the amount of dollars that you spend in fertility, multiply it by the acres that you farm, and ask yourself, are we really any different than betting on Nebraska football with these odds? And the answer is no. What we're going to cover today is how do we spend the dollar more effectively, more efficiently? How do we get that dollar to go much farther? Because let's just be honest, right? Let's be honest. Jared addressed it, and I think it was fascinating that he addressed it. A lot of people probably don't want to address it. What? We'll call them subsidies. We'll call them handouts. Call them whatever you want. Farm program payments, whatever they are. What did he say? What was the number he said? 2/3 of it passes through your hands into the suppliers, right? It allows everything else, all of our inputs, to remain somewhat more elevated as what they do. Now you get a portion of it, but the bigger portion goes. What we're going to focus on is how do you keep more of your dollar? How do you take that same dollar and drive it and make it more effective? So you've got a new farm that you just bought. Some of you, maybe you have a farm like this in your mind, okay? These are the two farms. If you bought Farmer A's farm, what's your initial reaction, okay? You bought the farm, you didn't have any historic soil tests on it. You got them, you called Brad, you called Derek, you said, hey, I want to get these pulled, and you see Farmer A's soil test. What's your immediate reaction that comes to your mind? Be honest.
Ooh. No.
Whatever I paid way too much. Whoever farmed it before did a junk job. Whoever did it before mined the soils. Whoever did it before didn't believe in fertilizer, didn't put any fertilizer on it. Right? Now, if you get Farmer B's soil test, what are you saying? Whatever I paid for it, I got to steal because look at the amount of fertility that I've got. Right? So for the last 50 years, think about what you have been taught and how we fertilize. Think about it. The last 50 years, what's the goal been? Build, maintain. Nobody wants their levels to drop, right? We're going to build phosphorus levels. What's the entire premise or the point of building phosphorus levels or potassium levels? Why do we want to build them? So it's in the ground, right? So the plant supposedly can use it. The more we have in the soil, the more our plants are going to get access to, right? Theoretically. I've heard it once said, maybe you guys have too. Finish this statement for me. Treat your soil like a
bank account.
A bank account. I'm going to challenge you on that thought process. It's not a bank account. It's a lockbox that your great-grandpa's grandpa buried somewhere on the farmyard, didn't tell anybody where it's at, and didn't tell anybody where the heck the key was at. That's the reality of this. Why, or how do I know this? These are the same growers. No, excuse me, they're different growers. It's the same soil type, same weather pattern. It is literally just across the fence line. Farmer B comes back from college. He says, you have one goal. That goal is don't let my soil test levels go down. Farmer A says, I don't care about soil tests as much as I care about the profitability. Can I make sure that I am still raising as good of plants as I possibly can? Look at this. Phosphorus levels in the plant. Now, we all agreed that Farmer A, we would talk really bad about him at the coffee shop, as long as he wasn't there. We'd feel pretty bad about whatever we paid for the land. We'd be excited and praising Farmer B. But I'm going to ask you, if what we've been taught for the last 50 years of building part per million levels in fertility, then why or how could A ever be true? How could we have more fertility in the plant with the amount of phosphorus in relation to the other? This isn't, we're not talking about a 4 part per million test versus a 12 part per million test. We're talking about 4 to 112. Almost 30 times more. Yes, Brad?
Is this real or did you make it up?
This is real. This data is from South Dakota. This is a grower that Jason has worked with. He's worked with both of these guys for a handful of years. What's the point of building soils if you can't move it into your plant? Now think about it for a second. Think about the years you've been farming. Think about the years that you've been fertilizing. Think about the years and the dollars and the money that you've spent. You probably don't have a warm and rosy feeling right now, do you? But yet, I'm going to ask this question. Some of you have been on this train a little bit more, so you're open to it, but I want you to fill in this sentence for me, okay? When Brad or Derek or Nate or anybody talks about biologicals, the first word that comes to your mind is what? Be honest, you're not going to hurt my feelings.
Snake oil.
Snake oil, what's another word? Bullshit. Yep, I got that one 2 days ago as well. What else? Come on. What? No way. I've got one. One of my favorite ones is weasel piss. That one's just kind of come up recently. That one might take the cake. It is by far my favorite. So we've got snake oil bullshit, weasel piss, fairy dust, foo-foo juice. Right, I've heard it all. But I'm going to ask the question and think about it. Who really is a snake oil? If for 50 years we've been taught, and there are people that are still talking about it today, that we should build our phosphorus levels in our soil test, and the theory or the premise is build your soil test levels so your plant have more. Congratulations, you built your soil test and your plants have less. But yet we don't question our retailer when we go in and buy 200 pounds of MAP. Why? Why do we think that is? Let's just stop as farmers. Why? Because we can feel it, we can touch it, and we can see a guaranteed analysis on it. We know that for every 100 pounds of MAP that we buy, we're getting 52 pounds of phosphorus. There's a mathematical equation that says that if you raise 200 bushel corn, you're going to remove 0.37 pounds of phosphorus per bushel. So you need 74 pounds. Great. It's a simple math equation. If you want to build it, you need more than 74 pounds. You want to maintain it, you should at least put 74 pounds on. Right? Have we been told wrong? And I think the answer is overwhelmingly yes, we've been told wrong. Right? But why? It's because that for years and years and years, we've looked at the soil one-dimensionally. Maybe two. Right? And you think about 3 dimensions of soil. It's chemical, it's physical, and it's biological. Right? So now, I asked this question the other day, and it was it was a very honest response. It was pretty fascinating because it was the first time in asking this question anywhere I've went that I ever got this response. So we talk about biologicals historically as snake oil, foo-foo juice, weasel piss, whatever, right? I get it. But I'm going to ask you a question. Has anybody ever inoculated their soybeans before? How many years ago did you first start inoculating or hear about inoculating soybeans? 20? 30? 20? 30 years? What's an inoculant?
Bacteria.
Bacteria. True or false? Bacteria would fall in the biological category. True. Okay, what about soybeans? How do soybeans create their nitrogen? Atmospheric fixation. How does that happen?
Bacteria.
Bacteria. How many of you have grown soybeans for more than 25 years? How about more than 30 years? But yet, as an industry, and this is not about farmers, right? I've had this question asked to me. They say, Bodie, with all the places that you've traveled, you get frustrated that farmers aren't open to the idea of biology. Do you get frustrated that they don't understand some of these things? And I say, no, because that's not who failed. We failed as an industry. And I say I'm talking about universities. I'm talking about agricultural companies. We have only looked at the soil, chemically only, period, end of story. That's it. Although biology has existed for far before we started farming, and it's going to exist after we retire from farming. Right? So again, the key to driving profitability on your farm is, we're going to answer it. It's this right here, WEOC. WEOC, water extractable organic carbon. Okay? It is the most important metric that you need to be measuring, yet it's not on 95% of the soil tests that are taken in the United States. So I'm going to ask you to think about something, okay? How many of you guys farm from wall to wall? Every acre that you have is flat, it's perfect, and it's the perfect organic matter. Not one of you, huh? Okay, so now I'm going to ask you another question. Think about your most challenging soil type or farm, and then think about your best farm, okay? You guys visualizing it? You probably all, the worst one came to mind just really fast, right? Is that one historically higher organic matter or lower organic matter? Lower, right? What about your better parts of your field? Are they typically higher or lower? Higher. Okay, so I know you guys probably don't have much sand right here, right? But where I was at earlier, the past couple of days, they've got sand to they've got a silty loam, right? And I asked them, and I put it this way because I think it will help you connect the dots when you've never seen WEOC before, okay? So here's what I mean. What I mean is they had a 1% sand and they had 1% organic matter sand and they had a 3% loam soil. And I asked everybody, I said, how many people want to farm only 1% sand? And everybody's hand went up, right? No. Everybody said, I want the 3%. So what is WEOC, okay? WEOC and organic matter do not have a direct correlation, and we can talk about why, but I want you to understand it in terms of this. Think of your 3% or your 4% organic matter soils. That's good WEOC. Think of your 1%, your 1.5% either sands or clays. That's low WEOC. Okay, now the inverse is also true. You can take a 4% organic matter soil, not pay attention to WEOC, not pay attention to nitrogen management, not pay attention to fertility efficiency, and you can turn a 4% organic matter soil into behaving like a 1.5% organic matter soil. It is simple. Just do not pay attention to the carbon content in your soils. What does that mean? Okay? How many people in this room raise soybeans? Oh, and I also forgot to say, I do have 350 slides we can go through. It's the same rules I've had every time I come to present here. We do 350 or we participate. Okay? All right. How many people are raising soybeans in this room? It always gets a hands up. Nobody wants to sit through the Okay, how many of you in this room, and I don't mean have seen 100 on a yield monitor, but have raised 100 bushel beans? How many want to raise 100 bushel beans? How many people like raising beans currently today? Yeah, about 3 of you, so that's what I'm going to speak to, okay? All right, so follow along here with me. And I will probably use a whiteboard, but I want to make WEOC real to you, okay? I want to make WEOC real to you. So there was a young man that I worked with out of North Carolina a few years ago. He was very hungry. He wanted to set the state record in North Carolina. And so what I did is I studied all of the nutrients that were important at different parts of that soybean plant's life cycle, okay? We made 14 foliar passes of nutrition on these soybeans, right? Paying attention to calcium, paying attention to boron, paying attention to iron and manganese, paying attention to potassium levels, paying attention to all of our macros, right? And at the end of that year, when we went to harvest those, what do you guys think that I got? Disappointment.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? It doesn't matter how many foliar trips you make. I don't care what it is. I don't care who the company is. I don't care how many foliar passes of something you make on your soybeans. If you're not paying attention to the carbon in your soils, you will not do it, number one, or you will not repeat doing it. And here's why, okay? How many pounds of N does it take to create a bushel of soybeans? 5. So we want 100 bushel soybeans. That's 500 pounds of N. How many of you guys are going to your retailer and writing checks for 500 pounds of N on your soybeans? Nobody. Okay, we talked about soybeans create their nitrogen through atmospheric fixation, through biology. Okay, so we've added a variable. Okay, and that variable is bacteria. How many of you guys have hired hands on your farms? Okay. Do they work for free? Neither does the biology in your soil. Okay? So here's the other variable. Right? This is how biology gets paid. Okay, they operate on a 5 to 8 to 1 carbon to nitrogen ratio. So that means, simple math here, if we want 100 bushel beans, it takes 5 pounds of N per bushel. We need 500 pounds of N. On the low side, we need 2,500 pounds of carbon. On the high side, we need 4,000 pounds of carbon to create 100 bushel beans. The reason why it doesn't matter how many foliar trips you make, it doesn't matter what your phosphorus part per million levels are, is because if you do not have enough carbon in your soils, they cannot produce the nitrogen that you need. Okay? How many of you have ever went and walked soybeans? I hope there's at least one person in this room that has, but how many of you have walked soybeans sometime in that R3 time frame? Okay? You ever done stand counts? You ever done node counts? You ever done pod counts? You ever done seeds per pod counts? You ever plugged it into the UNL formula? Congratulations. At R3, you have 225 bushel soybeans. No lie. So think about that. R3 to R6, Casey, roughly how many days between R3 and R6? 45 days? In 45 days, you lost 160 bushel worth of soybeans. How? Now, for years, we were always told, well, it was because we just didn't get consistent rains in August. Who's heard that, right? The key to 100 bushel beans is to spray a plant them early, spray a fungicide, catch rains in August, right? Well, I've given this presentation 5 times already this week, and the majority of them have pivots. So I asked them, I said, y'all go on vacation from R3 to R6 and you never run your pivots? And they're like, no. Well, there's a myth that we've currently dispelled then, right? I've gotten rain in August before. What don't I have as far as yield is going to be dependent upon what do I or don't I have as far as carbon levels. The growers that we've worked with that have raised over 100 bushel beans, the one thing that they have in common is they have some of the highest CSATs. For those of you that maybe don't know what that means is that's your carbon, that's your WEOC levels, divided by your CECs, and it's a saturation of your carbon per your soil's holding capacity. So again, the problem is it doesn't exist on a standard soil test. I would say that that's a fairly big problem because 95% of the soil tests that are taken across the United States are a standard soil test. What do I mean when I say standard soil test? It's got pH, buffer pH, organic matter, it's got your base saturations, it's got your P, your K, your calcium, your magnesium, your hydrogen, maybe some base saturations. If we haven't measured it for the last 50 years, why is it important now? Well, that's a good question. I'll tell you why. The one thing somebody asked me last night at dinner, they said, Bodie, if we're new to this different approach or this different thought process and we're looking at biology in a way that maybe we haven't before, where do we start? And I said, it's a great question. And I said, normally it starts by asking three or four other questions, right? Because every farm's operation is different. Their goals and objectives are different. I've been in the ag industry for 15 years, and I'm not sure there has been a time that I would say overwhelmingly the majority of farmers' goals do align very similarly, whether I'm talking to a group in New York or whether I'm talking to a group in western Nebraska. And that is what? That is, how do I make money in the environment in which I'm in? And I don't know that it's ever been clear that that's the number one thought process. I talked to a customer of mine a couple of days ago. I said, hey, have you done budgets for next year? He said, yeah, I just got started on it. I said, well, I'm planting a lot of corn this year because my soybean budgets look like trash. He texted me back a couple days later and he said, holy cow, he said, you weren't kidding. He said, I'm going to lose $137 an acre at 65 bushel beans, and I'm going to lose $1 an acre on corn at 220. Never has there been a clearer time that our focus is how do we remain lean, or as lean as we can. And if you go back, Brad and I have known each other for 5 years. Corey and I have known each other for 4.5 years. Dusty and I have known each other for about that much time as well. If you go back to the guys that I have worked with in that same time frame, understand that we're not here. This isn't an opportunistic sale. Understand that. BW Fusion isn't here. They didn't pop up out of the woodwork because corn is $4 and fertility prices are $800. This is a message that we've been talking about for years. Buck was working in retail. Buck was following along what BW Fusion was doing. Buck was interested in BW Fusion because of the message that we have been delivering. This is a message I've been delivering for 7 years. Guys, we have to start thinking about carbon. And if you're not measuring carbon, I'm going to challenge you that you need to figure out how. So how do we create it? How do we maintain it? And how do we build it? Number 1 is increase photosynthesis. Number 2, get efficient with nitrogen management. Number 3, reduce plant stress. Those are 3 things that if I'm thinking about as a farmer, what can I do? As a farmer, do you guys think that you can control increasing photosynthesis? Yes or no? Do you think that you can get efficient with nitrogen management?
Yeah.
Do you think that you can control or reduce plant stress? What if I told you today, in 2025, almost 26, that you can control every one of these facets? Every one of them. You can control, you can influence photosynthesis, you can increase it. We know we absolutely can get efficient with nitrogen management, and we do know that we can reduce plant stress today. So carbon creation, how are we going to do that? We're going to break long chain carbons and create smaller fragments of that available carbon that we talk about as WEOC. Again, there is a very poor correlation. In fact, I think the R value is 0.44 in relation to WEOC in organic matter. So do not get focused on, oh, I have a standard soil test, I have a 3% organic matter, I must have good enough carbon. That's not true. In fact, Buck and I would probably tell you that there are more cases that we see higher organic matter soils actually have less carbon in them. And this is why I did this math problem over here. Think about it. Okay? Think about this. I'm going to challenge you all to visualize. How many guys run green equipment in here? I know you don't, Tony. How many of you have Op Center? How many of you have Climate Field View?
Yeah.
Out of just a touch of a button, you can pull up your yield maps, right? All right, so visualize that you're sitting here and you're looking at whatever, your favorite farm. Okay? And you see the green area. And then you see the yellow area. And then you see the red area. Right? All right, congratulations. Now you're sitting with your retailer. You're getting ready to put a prescription together. Where are you putting more nitrogen on? The green, the red, or the yellow areas? If green is good, let's make the green greener, right? But we have to stop and ask ourselves, and this was a question that I remember this conversation. Brad calls me, and he's shelling corn. I think maybe it was 2 years ago. And he says, I know you've been talking about this for a long time. And he said, it's finally just really clicking with me. He said, I fertilized my hillside and I fertilized my bottoms relatively the same, right? This is kind of how that conversation went. And he said, I now understand. I fertilized them the same, but yet my bottoms were running 320 and my hillsides were running 180 to 210. But we fertilized them the same. If what we're told is true, and if soil chemistry is the only thing that we should think about, then that should never be true. You should have a solid yield map all the way across from one end of the field to the other based upon the fertility that you apply. If, and only if, what we have been told for the last 50 years is true. Now why? Right? Why are the bottoms better in the bottoms than on the hillside? Well, there's a couple of reasons, right? The first thing you're going to say is, well, soil type. Okay, I agree, right? The bottoms probably have what? They probably have a little bit higher organic matter. They probably have a little bit higher CEC. Those two things, we know that what? We know that we can hold, we can store more nitrogen, more water. Right? But what we have not accounted for the past however many years is those good areas are good for a reason. They're giving you free fertility. They're mineralizing already. So then when we don't account for that and we put the full rate of in on that, again, ain't nobody working for free. Nobody works for free. Right? So again, for every 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds of excess in, which it's more likely to see in our heavy soils than our light soils, 40, 50 extra pounds, multiply it by 5, multiply it by 8. That's 250 to 400 pounds of carbon that we are burning out every year by not understanding what that soil will give us. How many of you are in a traditional corn soybean rotation? Okay, so in our bottoms, we had, let's just use the number. Let's just say we had 30 pounds of N left over in that soil system. Okay, we burnt 240 pounds of carbon up. We followed it back with soybeans. Whoops. In a matter of 2 years, we've eroded carbon twice in that soil. Why? Because soybeans are a net negative carbon. They're going to consume, use, take way more carbon than they're ever going to dream about giving. Why? Because of this right here. You want 70 bushel beans, you need 350 pounds of N, you need 1,750 pounds of carbon on the light side, you need 2,400 on the high side. Breaking long chain carbons down, cellulose, lignin, chitin. What is that? That is made up of plant and animal waste. Manure has a lot of cellulose, lignin, and chitin in it. Your plant residue has cellulose, lignin, and chitin in it. Those are things. Your soil has cellulose, lignin, and chitin in it. It has long chains of carbon that you have the ability to go and break them down into smaller usable fractions that we would then call as WEOC. How do we improve photosynthesis? Balance nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, iron, manganese, zinc, boron. How about this one right here? I think this one's fascinating. Bullet point number 2. Did you know that it takes 161 pounds of sugar to create 1 bushel of corn? If you want 300 bushel corn, you need 48,300 pounds of sugar. So the question is you guys have probably seen it. There's companies that have built an entire business around applying sugar, selling sugar. You've heard people say, well, I spray Mountain Dew on my plants, right? There's sugar. You guys know how many days, roughly, that a corn plant grows? From time it's planted to time it's harvested? Or time it's planted to the time that it senesces?
115.
Depending on your maturity, it's anywhere around that 130 to 140 days that it's in the ground, that it's growing. So take this number. Let's just, for argument's sake, let's say you want 300 bushel corn. It's going to grow for 140 days. You need 345 pounds of sugar per day on average.
It's a lot of Mountain Dew.
That's a lot of Mountain Dew. Not dynamite. You might be Walmart's largest buyer if you go in and buy table sugar there. But even take it a step further, is there a single nutrient that you guys are writing a check for today that you are applying anywhere close to those pounds? Lime would be the closest, wouldn't it, Luke? You need 2 ton of lime, you're 4,000 pounds. You need 12 times more than 2 ton of lime in sugar creation. Reducing stress, I think this one is absolutely fascinating as well. Stressed corn provides 20% of the sugar to the system that a healthy plant does. Now, why do you guys think that these 2 bullet points are important? especially as we're talking about carbon. Okay, so let's think about it. What does a plant do? What's a plant do every day that the sun is out? Photosynthesis, right? So every plant has what? Okay? And those leaves do what on the top side?
Capture sunlight.
What do the leaves have underneath them?
Stomates.
Stomates. What do stomates do?
Capture carbon
They
dioxide.
take in CO2. Congratulations, you have now completed the photosynthetic process. Now, what is a result of that? You heard Casey talk about it in his presentation. He talked about he used the word photosynthates, or sugars. Okay? So now you've created them. Well, guess what? An unhealthy plant doesn't go through photosynthesis as efficiently as a healthy plant does. What do I mean by that? I mean that if we have a plant that has too much nitrogen in it, for an example, we disrupt the photosynthetic process, which means we disrupt the amount of sugar that we can create. Take it a step further. If we have a plant that is stressed, and again, too much nitrogen in a plant could be stress, heat could be a stress, drought could be a stress, those things could be stress. It's going to provide 20% of the sugar to the system that a healthy plant does. 20% of. That means there's 80% that isn't going to get it. Why? Because the plant is in defense mode. It is trying to preserve itself. Well, if you have a plant that is under stress, and it is playing defense and it's holding the sugar to itself, guess what it is not doing? It's not exuding. And if it doesn't exude, guess what? You're not positively impacting WEOC. If you're not positively impacting WEOC, guess what happens? You're not getting that free fertility. You're not getting mineralization. Does anybody remember the chart that Casey had up here in his presentation that talked about sunny days and cloudy days? You guys remember seeing the tip back? Okay, now I'm going to ask you something, okay? Think about this. Did you guys know that there was going to be 33 cloudy days and 5 sunny days when you put your nitrogen back on in the fall? So did you or did you not put the same amount of nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium that you normally would to try to achieve a yield goal? Yes or no? So how in the world did your plant tip back if everything that we've been taught, everything that we've ever spent our dollars on for the last 50 years around fertility management has been NPK and a little bit of S? Guys, your job as farmers, our job as fertility managers isn't to focus on the NPK, it's to focus on what it does. Your job is to build sugars. Period. End of story. You lost out on that opportunity because of the interruption to solar radiation. Thus, you had the tip back. Why? Because the corn plant knew it wasn't operating. Think about it as currency. Sugar is currency. Think about that. You'll hear Jason talk about it. You've either heard him on a podcast, you've either heard him, you've driven to Omaha, you've listened to him speak, and he talks about sugar is currency. So think about it. Nobody works for free, yes? Okay, your corn plant knows how much sugar, what the currency level is. It goes through 33 cloudy days, 5 sunny days. It says, I do not have the same level of currency, which means what? I cannot support what? I cannot support all of the life that I have on there. Thus, I'm tipping back. The most important thing that you guys can do today, tomorrow, and in the future is figure out how to build the most photosynthetically efficient plant that you can. It has often been said within our organization, if you can figure out how to produce more sugar than your neighbor, you will always win. Period. End of story. Now, we can't help you on the marketing. Jared can. We can't help you on crop insurance. Jared can. But we can help you build sugar. And if you figure out how to build more sugar and build more sugar efficiently, you will always win. You will win today in the short term. You will win tomorrow in the future. Why? Because if you're creating more sugar, you're able to sustain more life. More life is more kernels. More sugar equals higher kernel weights. All of that equals what? Yield. That's today. If you're creating more sugar, you're creating more WEOC. That's winning tomorrow. Like this one is a big one. For every 10 pounds we can reduce out of the soil, we're gaining 50 to 80 pounds. How did we get to this math right here? Bacteria operates on a C to N of 5 to 8 to 1. For every 1 part of nitrogen, they have to consume 5 to 8 parts of carbon to get back to their equilibrium. That's important to know. Biology will always do what it has to do to get back to its equilibrium. Why? Because nobody works for free. For every 10 pounds we can reduce out of the system, it's 50 to 80 pounds of carbon that we're putting back in the system, or we're simply not burning it out. Maximizing all the trips that you are making, right? You heard Casey, you saw Casey on this presentation. I think it was maybe a second or third slide from there. He had it. It was somewhere about right here on the TV, okay? And it said that he would like to see people move some nitrogen in season. Right now, I've brought this concept up to Brad in the past, and the idea of it is making some of you kind of squirmy, right? Right? We got hills, we got contours, we got all these things that make it a challenge. But think about it. What he's talking about from his perspective, what I'm talking about from my perspective, we might be coming from different perspectives, but we're trying to get to the same goal. Why? Because these two things are extremely important to remember. Write this down, take a note, maybe I'll write it up here. Fertilizer plus time equals tie-up. The more fertilizer and the longer that we put it out there, the more subject it is to being tied up. Okay? Now, the other side of it is the more in and the longer, so the more in, the longer amount of time that it's in the soil, the more carbon we're going to burn out. Why? Because nobody works for free. So by taking 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 50 pounds, it may not seem like much, but it's actually 250 to 400 pounds of carbon. Right? What do we know about chemistry? There's one thing that is absolutely the same between chemistry and marriage, and that is what? Opposites attract. Right? So think about this. We know that fertilizer plus time equals tie-up. Okay? When do you have an active plant growing? From the months of what to what?
May to September.
May to September. Historically, most of our fertility applications have been made when? November to March. Would you agree or disagree with the following statement? November to May is a decent amount of time. Fertilizer plus time equals tie-up. Okay? If we want to dismiss biology, if we want to say that it's foo-foo juice, weasel piss, snake oil, or anything else, I'm going to ask you, how do you get your dollars back that what you just spent in November then? How do we get them back? You put 200 pounds of MAP on in November, how do you get it back? And you can say, well, how do you know that I'm not getting the availability? Great question. I'll answer it for you. How many people have liquid on their planters? Okay, great. Here's my challenge to you. Call up your retailer, wherever you buy your inputs. Tell them that you would like to run 10-30-40 this year with an unchelated zinc. Okay, you don't want it chelated, you don't need it. Right? Now, I'm not going to give you my phone numbers because you will call and cuss me and call me every name under the book. Why? Because you didn't make it 5 feet because you have a brick in your tank. That's why we run chelation. Because opposites attract. Zinc is a cation, it's positively charged. Phosphorus is an anion, it's negatively charged. What else do we know is positively charged in our soils? Luke, what do you spread a lot of in the fall?
Lime.
Is calcium a positive or a negative charge?
Positive.
2+, right? All right, so add another one. Now we have zinc. Now we've established calcium as well. What about magnesium? It's also a positive charge. What about iron? Also a positive charge. What about manganese? also a positive charge. There's 5 nutrients, just 5 that we've talked about in 30 seconds that all have the ability to fix or tie up your phosphorus. Congratulations. How do you get it back?
Biology.
What determines the success of how you get those nutrients back is biological activity, enzymatic production, and the enzymes. Think of enzymes as scissors. Enzymes cut. They go in and they cut the phosphorus away from the calcium. Now you have calcium and now you have phosphorus, both available for uptake. Without biology, you have calcium ditriphosphate, which is an insoluble bond. Your plants aren't taking up rocks. Fertilizer plus time equals tie-up. Okay? How do we get the dollars back that we've invested not only today, but the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Again, maximizing every trip that you're making. If you know that you're making a fungicide pass, look at it. I'm not telling you you have to do it, I'm telling you to look at it. Are there options that you could make a foliar nitrogen pass that will give you that same credit of nitrogen? Maybe it'll give you 5 pounds, maybe it'll give you 10 pounds. Great. Every one of those decisions, you are now able to take some out of the soil, which is preserving carbon, which is allowing you to take steps forward at building carbon in your soils. I love this data. This is a grower that I worked really closely with. I want to give you a little bit of a background. They own 8,000 acres. They farm 4,000 acres. Guess what the other 4,000 acres are currently doing? They're sitting in CRP because it was more profitable there than farming them. And they own them. Now again, if what we have been taught is true for the last 50 years of agronomy, if I put more fertility out, I should have what? More yield. Right? Okay, so pre-working with us in 2021, it took all 4,000 acres. Every acre of corn that they grew, they needed it to fulfill their silage contract. They were putting 30,000 gallons of dairy manure on plus 180 pounds of nitrogen. They were split applying their dairy manure, 15,000 in the fall, 15,000 in the spring. They were side dressing 180 pounds, right? Some would say, yeah, they're trying to do things agronomically. Now let me ask you this. Anybody have access to manure or ever spread manure? Great. Love this. As farmers, I'm going to pick on you for a second because you said you have manure and you sell seed, yes?
Yes.
Okay. If you knew that a farmer was going to put manure on a farm that had never gotten it before, do you want your hybrid or Brad's hybrid on that farm? Why?
Usage available right away.
Because it's going to be better corn. And the farmer's going to say, Luke's got better corn than Brad's got. And Luke gets to sell more corn next year. So now let's think about it from the farmer's perspective. The farmer's perspective is what? We have 2 reactions to this, and I absolutely love it. I'm guilty of it. Right? So we have hog manure, so I'm going to use liquid in this example. But if we put 5,000 gallons of hog manure on and we see 15 bushel response, we have 2 reactions. What are they?
Moron.
If some is good, more is better, right? That's one. The other one is more often. So if 5,000 got us 15, maybe 7,500 gets us 20 or 25, right? So I tell this story because I had a customer 5 years ago, and he calls me and he says, Bodie, he says, I don't know what these companies are putting in these feed rations today, but the manure today is not as good as what it was when I started. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, so you know that you're not getting the same amount of phosphorus? He said, no, I'm not getting the same yields. He said, my yields are actually lower now after doing this. So I asked him, I said, okay, well, what'd you do? He said, the first year I ran 5,000. It was really good corn. I've ran 7,500, and I've ran it every year, and I've put corn on it. Okay. I said, all right, well, let's test this, right? Let's go out and see if the phosphorus levels in your soil are going down exponentially. So we go out there and we get them. We compare them back to his soil samples from the years past, guess what we found? Phosphorus levels doubled. Maybe you're seeing a trend. But if what we've been taught is true, that should never happen. My yield should never get lower as my fertility gets higher. Yes, that's what we've been told. If it's not true, then why in the heck have we spent the amount of money trying to build to a certain part per million value? I've seen it time and time again. What did we find? I took a soil test. Guess what I found? I found that his WEOC levels were extremely low. Why? Because we had carbon burnout. Why? This example right here. How many of you would walk into your retailer and say, I want to raise 250 bushel corn next year, and I want to buy 456 pounds of nitrogen to do it? The answer is nobody, but we don't give it a second thought because it's manure. Manure is great. We got to have it. We should have it. We want it. We don't ever account for what the nutrient load is. We just say, well, it's manure. Or we have it. We got to get rid of it. Let's just go put it on. That's what this outfit was really struggling with. Let me put this into terms with you. This is 420 pounds of P2O5. So I'll do the math. That's like 800 pounds of MAC. 850 pounds of potash. 456 pounds of N, and that's what they were putting on every single year. And I hear some grumbling and some, oh my gosh. That's not even the worst part. The worst part, in my opinion, is that putting it in CRP was more profitable than farming. That's the worst part. So they called me. They got my number. We messaged back and forth on Twitter for a little bit. They called me, and the reason that they called me was they thought they needed a tanker load of potassium acetate. So I asked them questions. I'm guilty of this. My dad, man, I bugged the shit out of him and my grandpa when I was a little boy farming them truck. Why do we do this? Why do we do this? Why do we do this? It wasn't ever to be annoying. I just had a genuine curiosity. So they call and they say, we need Ks. I said, well, what makes you think that? Well, let me send you some videos. They started sending me some videos. I said, well, tell me about your fertility program. They told me about their fertility program. I'm like, I'm not sure that you need K. They flew me out to their farm. I walked their farm. Walking on their farm felt like walking on this shop. Looking at it, their soil had scales across it like a fish. I dug and it stunk. What did I know? I knew that they didn't have a functional system. They had all the fertility in the world, but they didn't have a functioning system. We pulled a soil sample. We said, okay, and this is what I told them. This was in the midsummer. They had just they filled up their UAN tanks, summer filled. Now, mind you, okay, play the scenario out in your head and see how you would do it, okay? They call a guy from the internet to come out to their farm because they thought they needed some K. And some guy from Indiana says, I'm not going to sell you the K that you think you need because that's not what you need. You need this. Now taking a step further, they had just bought all their UAN. They got it at a really good price. They felt really good. Guess what I told them after I got their soil test back? You're not going to use it. From some guy they met on the internet. And they sat on that UAN for 2 years. We didn't use it. I said, listen, I understand you have to use the manure. They had a contract. They had obligations with the dairy because the dairy didn't control any land. They share a farmyard with the dairy. They had to use it. Okay? So the option wasn't, we'll give it to your neighbors, get rid of it, don't use it. That wasn't an option. We had to use it. So I said, here's what we're going to do. Instead of running 30, we're going to run 10. That's the max. You're not going to run any more than that. Oh my gosh, my applicators are not going to be happy. I said, I don't really care. 10,000, that's it. I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a very pointed approach. We're going to focus on trying to react the nitrogen that you're putting in there with the manure. We're going to react the carbon that is in that manure, the carbon that is in your soil. That is our focus. We're going to try to extract as much as we can out of that, and we're not putting another pound of nitrogen in that soil. Last year he calls me, It would have been sometime in August. They're walking, they're doing estimates with their crop insurance agent. He says, Bodie, you're not going to believe it, but he says, we're going to meet our silage tons on 2,400 acres. Guys, they had a 780 on tracks. My son loves it. I sent him a picture when I went and toured the farm. Oh, he was drooling. He thought that we needed it, right? Yeah, for 1,500 acres, we need a 780 on tracks. They hadn't run it in 3 years because it took every acre for silage. They hadn't got to run it. He got to call me. He says, I get to shell 1,600 acres of corn. He was excited. He got to shell corn. I was excited. I was doing backflips because guess what? I was doing the math in my head, and I knew that 4,000 acres, that was their revenue. They hit their revenue on 2,400 acres, which means that they had 1,600 acres that they never got to put to their bottom line that they now got to put to their bottom line. To me, that's real, that's dollars, that's efficiency. That's what we're trying to solve. This year, we haven't let them stray. We've stayed on this path, on this focus. We are spreading the manure out to more neighbors today than what we were because we don't need the same amount of silage tons. The dairy has actually had to go find other farms to go get silage from because they said, listen, we're shelling as much as we can. We will meet our obligations with you, but that is it. We're not giving you any more. Today, this year, they shelled 2,800 acres of corn. Now, that's not even the most exciting part, in my opinion. If what we've been taught is true, more pounds of in should mean higher yields, so this could never be true, but yet it's true. So which one, who's the liar? They're shelling more corn today than they ever have, and they're putting on 2/3 less on their nutrients. How are we able to accomplish it? Because this is what we focused on. This was our number one priority. In this same time frame, we saw a 40% increase in WEOC. How did we do it? We got really efficient with the nitrogen. We focused on photosynthesis. We're focusing on building healthy plants. We're focused on pumping sugars into that soil system.
Question. There's 60 pounds different, or 60 parts per million different there. And that is enough to change the dairy guys' numbers on silage versus shelling corn?
1,000%.
And you said we could save 50 to 80 pounds of carbon. How does pounds compare to ppm?
It's not a static conversation, and the reason why is that as you build carbon, what you get is you're also going to get consumption of carbon, which makes sense, right? As you have more food available, they're going to eat. As a result of eating more, guess what you get as the farmer? Nutrients. Yes. So this question has been asked, and I love the question. And so I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to pretend that you asked the question. I'm going to answer the question. The question is where will I be disappointed in using biologicals? I love the question. I love it. Here's how you're going to be disappointed. Where you will be disappointed is you use biology that is known, and it doesn't care what it does not care what your yield is. It don't care whether your corn makes 100, 200, 300, or 400. It asks itself a couple questions. Number one, do I like my environment, right? Is the pH right? Number two, is there food available? And if the answer is yes to both of those, then guess what they do? They eat, they consume, they excrete enzymes. Those enzymes do what? We already talked about it.
Cut.
They cut. They make nutrients available. So if you use biology, how and when can you be disappointed? The answer is simple. Put a biological product in and do not change anything in your program, and you can be disappointed like thousands of others. Kind of sounds like a commercial, right? You guys have those lawyer commercials. If you were in a wreck, join this claim with thousands of others that are just like you.
I work for Geico.
I might have a future. That's how. You're going to buy a product, you add an expense on your bottom line, and now in your mind, you have to have what? You got to have more bushels to pay for that product. Guys, how did we arrive at biology being snake oil? It was just that. There were companies that came to you. They said, we've got the greatest thing. They didn't ask you what you were struggling with. They didn't educate you on what the role was. They said, we have something for you. Use it, buy it. It will solve all your problems. Guess what? You added an expense to your bottom line. You maybe or maybe not didn't see a yield. If you didn't see a yield, you went into this category over here, and this category over here was weasel piss, snake oil, foo-foo juice. Don't ever come back and see me. Biology should be paid for before the combine ever thinks about getting out of the shed. Understand that. Biology doesn't do what it does for any form or function of yield. It simply creates nutrients. Now you have to ask the right questions. What nutrients does it provide? Right? So a 40% increase in their carbon, i.e. the WEOC levels, and look what happened to their soil test. We doubled the amount of phosphorus. Now hold up just a second. Let's establish some things. We're putting on 2/3 less nutrients. Would you guys agree with that math? It's somewhere close, right? Yeah. And would you agree or not agree that yields have went up in this time frame? Okay, so wait a second. Yields have went up. Fertility applied has went down. Whoa. How in the heck does this happen? How did soil test levels double? My yields went up, so that means I'm removing more. My application went down, so that means I'm applying less. But yet my soil test availability doubled. If you leave with nothing else today, leave with just questioning fertilizer. Does that mean that we're never going to use it? And the answer is no, we're never going to use it. But maybe the anger towards biological companies should maybe be shifted just a little bit to the universities, to Nutrien, to Mosaic, to Potash Corp, to whoever else. Because I think, I know that what we've been taught for the last 50 years is flawed at best. What drives the system is simple. It's this right here. Focus on building your carbon. Your soils will give to you in ways that you didn't think were possible. Disregard carbon. Don't pay attention to carbon. Continue to farm like we have for the last however many years. And this is what's going to happen. And I don't say this as a threat. I say this as an absolute fact. If we continue to not pay attention to carbon, this is what's going to happen. Your yield levels are going to be here or here. And your pounds needed of fertilizer per bushel are going to go here. Now you guys just look at that graph. Maybe I'll do it over here. I guess if we're going to continue to choose to farm like that, thank God we heard Jared speak first, because that's all we're going to make is $124 an acre payment. That's reality. How do I know this to be true? Has anybody ever taken out a fence line? Has anybody ever broke a pasture out? Has anybody ever taken a woods out? Has anybody ever farmed over that? Okay, now here's what I'm going to ask you. How many years did you fertilize that woods? How many years did you fertilize that fence line? How many years did you aggressively fertilize that pasture? 5 years after taking it out, can you still see where the fence line was, where the CRP was, where the pasture was, and where the woods is? Well, how in the heck could that happen? And I'll tell you, there's only one thing, and it's a common denominator. No matter where you go, your WEOC levels are higher there. I did this presentation in Gothenburg on Monday, I think it was. I get done talking, and I could see the guy. I mean, he was beelining right for me. I couldn't have got out of there fast enough if I wanted to. He's on his phone, and he's scrolling through here, and he's got 2 pivots, and he shows them to me on his phone. And he says, I'm not going to tell you anything other than there used to be a pasture somewhere on these two pivots. Do you know where? And I said, yep, it's right here. And I took my finger and I do around. He looks at his wife, he looks at me, he looks at his wife, and he says, how in the world did you know? And I said, because I've seen it. I've experienced it. I took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waterways out at my home farm this year. Guess what stood out like a sore thumb? Those waterways. I didn't fertilize the waterways. Guess what I had? I had more carbon in those waterways. Why? Because I had a permanent rooted crop that was always out there capturing sunlight, and I wasn't putting nitrogen to burn up the system. So I'm capturing sunlight, I'm leaking exudates, those exudates are building carbon, I have more carbon, I'll be able to see where them waterways are for 3 or 4 more years minimum. The success of our operations, the ability to continue to grow if you want to grow, to be able to continue to maintain if you want to maintain, to be able to give it to the next generation, is going to be who adopts to carbon. Who starts farming with carbon as their forefront and center. Share just a couple of data trends with you. Again, this is something that we've seen. This data comes from the Indiana area. Growers that adopted the agronomic principles that we talk about, reducing fertilizer, leveraging biology. We saw 35% increase in organic nitrogen. We saw 34% increase in plant available calcium, 14% increase in plant available potassium, 67% increase in available phosphorus, 8% increase in WEOC, and a 3% increase in organic matter. I'll show you this. I know it's busy, don't spend a lot of time on it. We'll go to the next slide. I got a summary of it. But what I wanted to show you is after I get done with a couple of these presentations, there's 2 really common questions. Number one is if I'm talking to a group that's got some light sands, they say, well, we've got light organic matter soils. Your product probably isn't going to work there, is it? And I go back through the conversation of paying attention to WEOC, not organic matter, not CCs, whatever. Second most popularly asked question is well, I no-till. Congratulations. Well, I no-till, and I've read that I'm doing things that my neighbor that runs a tillage pass, he's not doing. He's destroying his soil, he's killing his soil, and I'm building my soil. So your products, I'm not going to see a response to them. Okay? So this data set comes from a neighbor of mine who's been 17 years no-till. They do a very nice job farming. And I said, hey, would you be willing to do a trial with me? And he said, yeah, I'd do a trial with you. So this is a soil test when we started. This was a soil test this year. It would have been, when we applied that, it would have been before any biology was applied, and then we would have had 23, the crop year of 23, the crop year of 24, and then 25 biology applied, and we pulled the soil test. It was pulled 2 years and a day apart. Okay, so it was pulled in the same time frame. It wasn't like we're comparing spring versus fall. But let's look at it. We saw a 20% increase in organic matter from 2023 to 2025, long-term no-till. We saw a 53% increase in his WEOC. Oh, I forgot one detail that's fairly important. He's cutting these beans this year, and he calls me. He didn't even know what he said. I'm like, aha, love it. I said, hey, how'd them beans around your house do? He goes, can you believe it? He said, they were a record. 12 inches behind our 10-year average for the growing season we were in Indiana this year. Now, we were told high-yield soybeans, plant them early, spray a fungicide, and we need rain in August. Well, we didn't get much rain in August. 6 bushel better these beans were than his previous best. How? Look at his WEOC. How do I know it's not chemical phosphorus? Look at the box on the right. Now, do we pay attention to this box on the right? And the answer is no, we don't pay attention to chemical side. We're looking at what's plant available. Let's look at what happened to the plant available. So here's another thing. if what we've been told is true and we should build the magical part per million levels, we should have higher yields as this goes up. We had higher yields as this came down. But the chemical side and what the plant actually gets to recognize, there's no correlation. We had a 22% increase in our available phosphorus, but we had a 4% increase in our chemical phosphorus. I don't care about the box on the right, because that box in the middle on the bottom is what my plants actually get to recognize. We had a 26% increase in potassium, all while reducing his P and K, leveraging a biological system focused on carbon creation, nutrient reduction, and nutrient reallocation. How does it happen? This slide, I think it's a simple slide, but it does a very good job. For the last 50 years, this is the only pool that we have focused on. Is this right here. Okay, that's what your standard soil test is measuring. In fact, for years, they denied having any knowledge that either of these ever existed. Okay, those of you that have an indicator soil test from the group here at NextGen, raise your hands real quick. Would you have run indicator maxes on all of those? Okay, so on your indicator maxes, if you go home and you want to look at these, okay, your XRF phosphorus is this pool right here. Okay, that's what this pool is. This is the one that we've managed for years, and this is what the plant actually recognizes. Okay, so we know that this is cycling. We know that we have to get it over here before the plant can take it up, but it doesn't stop here. Okay, so now let's think back to when we put our map on. Right, we put our map on in November. It went into this pool. Oh, sorry, it went into this pool right here, okay, because it's inorganic chemistry. Right, do you guys understand that? You don't know the difference between inorganic and organic chemistry? There's one element that separates the two. It's carbon. Attach carbon to it, it becomes organic chemistry. No carbon, it's inorganic chemistry. Plants take up inorganic nutrients. Great, so we bought MAP, we put it on. It immediately went here. You got corn growing in November? Okay, so we don't have a root to take it up. So if we don't have a root to take it up, again, what did we say? Fertilizer plus time equals what? Okay, how did we get here? We put it on in November, we don't have a root. You guys told me that, I didn't tell you that. So here's what happens. Now if it's in this pool, what's it tied to? Right? Well, it's probably tied to the 2 ton of lime that Luke went out and spread just before we went and spread the map. Okay? So it's sitting in this pool, right? Now, it tells us that we have phosphorus, but it's not actually plant available because it's calcium phosphate. Okay? But not all of it's in here. Some of it went over here. Right? This is tied to carbon. Well, those of you that said that biology was snake oil, weasel piss, and everything else, how do you get it unattached from carbon?
Scissors.
Biology. What does biology eat?
Carbon.
Carbon. But guess what? If you use biology, not only do you get to move this pool over to here, you now get to move this pool over to here. How does our phosphorus increase? It's because we put biology that consumes carbon, it excretes the phosphatase enzyme, that's specifically around phosphorus, so we're taking out of this pool, we're taking out of this pool, we're moving it over to here. Why do we want to pay attention to carbon? What do microbes eat?
Carbon.
If you have higher levels of WEOC in your soil, what do you think you get to do?
Feed more bugs.
Feed more bugs, but it don't stop there. You get to feed more bugs longer. What did Casey say about when the majority of our nutrients are taken up in corn?
Post-tassel.
All right, so let's think about this. When does that normally happen?
June through August.
July 4th. Okay, so let's back up in time here. We put our phosphorus on when?
November.
And the majority of our plant takes it up when? July. How much time is in between those two? Fertilizer plus time equals what? So how in the heck are you getting your dollars out if you don't like biology or it's weasel piss or snake oil? Why should you pay attention to carbon? Because of this. The more carbon you have in your soil, the more reactions you get to have, longer. You understand that? The more carbon that you have feeds your bugs longer. If you feed your bugs longer, you get mineralization longer.
Had a lot of conversations with some pushback that the belief is we need to put the dry on in the fall because it takes a long time for it to break down and become available.
Love that. Also, guilty of it 12 years ago, sitting there when customers would come into my office when I worked in retail, and I told them the same exact thing. And then I started asking questions. Remember, because I was that annoying little kid that always asked my dad and grandpa questions? Anybody in here sell dry fertilizer? I mean, if they haven't walked out, if they do sell dry fertilizer and I haven't walked out yet, I'm shocked. But go to your retailer. Do they have piles of MAP and potash sitting outside? Why not? Why do they spend millions of dollars to put a barn over fertilizer?
So don't get rained on.
Well, what's it matter if it gets rained on if it takes a really long time to break down? Shouldn't matter. I mean, these guys, they're idiots. Why are they spending that money? They don't need to spend that money. Put it in your pocket. Pay the CEO more. Maybe they know something that we don't know. Why have we put fertilizer on the fall? Why have we been told that it's because it takes so long? Because it's convenient. Oh, guess what? Here's the other thing. If you make a decision and you buy your MAP today, guess what you're not doing? You're not pricing anybody else out for MAP tomorrow because you already bought it. They know how many tons that you are going to put on once you put it on. Kind of committed to it. Yeah? It's convenience. The industry has sold a lie built around convenience. How do I know that? I took a napkin that was slightly wet. I walked out to the potash pile. I put my hand on it. I raised it. Do you think I just had a wet napkin that was still white, but just an off-colored white because it was wet? Or do you think I had something pink on it? And if you say that you think it was pink, you would be correct. Now, if it takes a really long time to break down, then I should be able to do that as many times as I want, and there should never be a transfer. But what the transfer showed is there was a degradation of product when I influenced it with what? Water. There's a product on the marketplace today. It's a 00. You can buy it as a 0011, a 0012, or a 0013. Okay? So, first 0 is what? Second 0 is what? Third 0 is? Guess what? Guess what temperature we have to make a 00, 11, 12, or 13? Guess what temperature water we have to have? Guess what crazy harsh acids we have to use to get it? None. We don't have to break it down with any harsh acids. All we got to do is we got to put it in water. Then we agitate it. Here's another one. How many of you have ever went out and spread fertilizer? Again, let's go with their theory, not my theory, but their theory. You spread fertilizer in the fall because it takes so long to break down, and you guys no-till, and you guys can go back out in like 3 weeks and you can find every prill that they spread. Nope.
Never.
Well, if you can't find the prill, where is it?
Still not broken down.
It's in the soil. Fertilizer plus time equals what? There it is. How do we get it back? Well, for years we haven't paid attention to getting it back. We just take whatever the soil gives us, we move it on, and we say, well, that's...
So all these years before microbes, we've been wasting our money?
For all these years before paying attention to a biological system, we've spent an inordinate amount of money with a very piss-poor return. Yes. Now, do I want to say you've wasted money? No, because it's still in the soil,
Just ain't available.
but it ain't available. And we're not effectively moving it to the plant. So then I'll back up and I'll say, well, if it's available, if it's not available and we're not moving it into the plant, did we waste the money? Yeah, kind of.
So when are we supposed to supply them line map?
So that's a great question. So I'm still a proponent of, you got to get your pHs right. We want to make sure our pH is right. You spread your lime in the fall because lime, not P and K, lime does take a significant amount of time to break down and to affect the pH. Wholeheartedly agree, lime, put it on in the fall to make the change. Yes. I want to answer this question first. The P and the K, however, for me, I want to put it as close to it being available as possible. For me, my favorite is to go in season. Why? Because my job isn't to build to a soil magical number. My job is to fill the gaps. That's your job. That's all of your jobs. Right? Why do we take a soil test? Well, for years we've taken a soil test and we've said, well, we got to get to here and we're going to try to get to here, and once we get to here, then it's going to be good. Right? But what our job really is our job is to fill the gaps. It's to fill what the soil can't release, and that's the delta that we make up. Now, again, take some steps back. I know that I can influence or manipulate the release of my soil with more carbon, with more biology, but I'm still adding some nutrients. I'm just doing it at a time where the plant actually can take it up. So I had this conversation with an individual that came up here, and he said, I got to be honest, I'm a little nervous about the in-season applications. And I said, rightfully so, I understand the question. But I said, think about it this way. If we know that fertilizer plus time equals tie-up, and we know that a plant photosynthesizing produces sugars, and the sugars feed the soil, and the biology makes nutrients available, and we know that this cycle is true, if you had a perfect world, when would you want to apply it? Wouldn't you want to apply it when the plant needs it? Well, at least as close to it, right? And so with equipment today, with auto steer, with skinny tires, with fertilizer machines built on them, we can efficiently deliver nutrients in season, and we don't need the same level of nutrients. It is a cheat code. Because I now don't need the same level of nutrients, because I'm going to get more out of what I put on, because I'm not allowing it to get tied up with all these other nutrients. I'm delivering it when the plant needs it. So I'm putting it on, and I'm immediately going to this pool right here. That pool is immediately going to go up, pretend a corn plant's right here. There's an amount of it that's going to immediately get taken up. I'm already at an advantage that over my guys that apply in the spring or apply in the fall. Does that make sense? But
We had a custom applicator guy that he out there joining to my neighbors and I'm still calling about him, but he's just looking at acres, right?
correct.
He ain't looking out for the good of the.
Correct. He's got acres to cover. He's got a job to do. He's got fertilizer to move.
Thinking logistics with a retailer, coming from retail.
Yeah.
When do we have a lull in our time that we have the opportunity to go out and do it? Fall and winter. Everyone knows we're spraying, we're delivering fertilizer, but in the fall and winter, we have time to put dry fertilizer out. It's logistics for it. 100%. No, Bodie, I was going to say something about lime. Talk about lime for a second. How high do you actually need to raise your pH?
So yeah, Buck and I are gonna be different than maybe most on the pH. We're not trying to get to a 6.7, a 6.8, a 6.9. Ideally, if we can get to a 6.2 or a 6.3, and then we'll make sure that we pay attention to the available calcium levels. But as you really start to get over 6.5, your micronutrient release starts to really suffer. The nutrients that are going to suffer is going to be your zincs, your manganeses, and your irons. So let's stop and pull back that for a second, and let's see, what do zinc, what do manganese, what do iron do? Okay, well, iron and manganese, maybe the two most important nutrients outside of nitrogen for chlorophyll production. What's chlorophyll do? Chlorophyll directly influences photosynthesis. So as we drive our pHs up higher and we're lowering the release rate of those nutrients, we've already established that we need to improve photosynthesis, and we know that iron and manganese improve photosynthesis. that's the biggest reason that we don't want to push those pHs to really high amounts. So what we do is we want to get to that 6.2, 6.3 mark, and then we'll pay attention to our calcium levels, our H3A calcium levels, and we have alternative solutions to that, making sure that we're keeping those numbers in alignment. Leave you with just a couple of slides.
Bodie, before you go there for a second, come back to the piece of where you said, when do biologicals not work?
Yep.
But in the reality, right, what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes of all the positive pieces, but it doesn't work if you're not willing to
Change.
change. 100% of the answer right there in that equation. Like, you cannot.
I kind of hate that though, because didn't Obama run on change?
My point is, if you're not willing to make the change, then you're just throwing good dollars at bad things.
Extremely accurate. Yep. No, I appreciate that. All right, so I'll leave you with just a couple of slides here. I truly mean this. I absolutely love coming out to Nebraska. It's probably one of my favorite states to come out here. I've gotten to come out here multiple times throughout the last 5 years. Met some great people as a result of it. Some of them that have become extremely good friends, well beyond just being customers. But when I came out here 5 years ago, the question is you want to, here's this new guy coming from Indiana. Like, we got to find out whether this guy's just full of BS, whether he's believable. Does he have any actual experience? So you tell him, yeah, I'm a farm kid. And they say, well, you still farming? I said, yeah, I'm farming. They say, you irrigating? And I said, no, I'm dry land. And they said, well, how many inches of rain do you get annually? And I told them. And they said, oh, no. They said, you don't get to classify as a dry land farmer. They said, dry land is actually dry land where we don't get that kind of rain. So about 5 years ago, I coined the term that I'm faith-based irrigator. Okay, that's who I am. I'm a faith-based irrigator. I do not have any pivots, but I don't not get enough rain to be considered dry land. Okay, they made it very clear to that. The past 2 years, so 2 years ago, we were 10 inches below our 10-year average in rainfall through the growing season. This year, we were 12 inches below our 10-year average during our growing season. And I only show you this for one thing, and one thing only. Okay, this is third year corn on corn. If my neighbor who works with our local retailer went in and said, I have a yield goal of 250 bushel corn, build me my nitrogen, my phosphorus, etc. program, this program, what it would look like would be a 245, 105, 110. Okay, that's what it would look like. Right? Third year corn on corn. I did it with 100 pounds of EM less. I did it with 3/4 less P. I did it with half the amount of K. And the only reason that I leave you with this is to understand what the impact is for tomorrow by paying attention to your WEOX today. Are you going to get here by tomorrow? And the answer is absolutely not. You are not going to go from a farming chemically or synthetically to switching to biology and being able to achieve this. Guys, this has been my focus. I told you at the beginning that for 7 years, 8 years, I have studied WEOC, water extracted organic carbon. It has been a focus of mine. For the last 5 years, I have really dived into it. Okay? When I make a fertility application, when I look at my inputs that I'm going to buy, the first question that I don't ask is well, how much nitrogen do I need? It's what can I get out of my soil? What are my WEOC levels? How efficient can I be? What can I do to influence that based on the passes that I'm going to make? Cropping rotation absolutely comes in here. You guys will struggle to build WEOC levels significantly if you are in a just corn soybean rotation. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but it's going to be difficult. It's going to be dang near impossible if you don't change your nitrogen program. If you're still putting 200 pounds again on in the fall, raising corn, and then going to soybeans, it is going to be extremely difficult to raise your WEOC levels. Now, I share this to show you that this is what is possible. My WEOC levels on our farm from when we started to where we're at today is a 78% increase in WEOC levels. We're up 78%.
Where was you to start with?
I started at 88, I'm at about a 156. I called up Jason, who owns the lab, and I said, Jason, I said, you're gonna find this fascinating. I went back and looked at my soil tests. I put in the same exact yield goal from then to now. 60 less pounds of N, 70 less pounds of P, and 100 less pounds of K is what I'm applying than what that soil test called for when I started. Because of my WEOC. My phosphorus levels haven't ran rampant, my K levels haven't ran rampant, but my WEOC levels have absolutely ran rampant. They've almost doubled. Okay, this is the goal, right? This is the target. How do we drive efficiency? You build carbon. You build carbon, you will drive efficiency. Yes, sir.
That was 3 years prior to this or 5 years?
Which one?
Well, where you started.
Yeah, so 5 years ago, I got really serious about trying to build my carbon levels, yes. 7 years I have been managing it, or I should say soil testing it and looking at it. 5 years I've gotten really aggressive at trying to build it.
You just made a comment earlier, and I want to differentiate from that you use 146, 2042. And I want guys to understand that's not what you use, it's what you apply.
Correct, yes.
You use it's, what the plant needed.
Yes,
The difference was what was available.
yes,
That and I wanted my $2.
yes.
So what corn, soybean, that's pretty common around here, rotation, what type of program did you use to build that WEOC that quick?
So this particular farm here would be its 3rd year corn. So we're probably 85% corn now on our farm. So we'll have 1,350 acres of corn and a couple hundred acres of soybeans. And we won't put soybeans onto anything unless it has at least had a minimum of 2 years of corn. No. It's a good question. We only cover crop where we graze our cows in the wintertime. That's the only places that we do.
Bodie, just to feed off of Casey's comments, walk us through when and what form you applied the 126, 2042.
Listen, my secrets are extra, okay? You got me here, okay? I'm fulfilling an obligation. Secrets are
You
extra.
get an extra $2 bill.
Oh, wow.
It's worth it.
I mean, guess I won't have to work the street corners. So I would have put 50 pounds of N and 15 pounds of sulfur in a weed and feed pass ahead of my field cultivator. Yes, I do tillage. Yes, I'm one of the guilty ones. I don't care about the environment. I'm destroying the soil. Okay. 50 pounds of N, 50 pounds of N as UAN. 15 pounds of sulfur via ATS. Worked in, I would have had 3 gallons of 1034O in furrow with fulvic and zinc. This is also non-GMO corn, so I would have had a generic insecticide in there. Then I would have top dressed, I guess I should back up, I side dressed 96 pounds of N, 90 pounds of N, and some sulfur at about V4, center of the row, via aqua ammonia, which is anhydrous, ran through a T reactor, so it's a liquid form. Then I would have top dressed with MAP and potash at V6. And in my fungicide pass, I would have had amino, a slow release urea, and a fungicide pass. And then I would have had a full sun pass at V8 and BioCast Max pre-plant and BioBoost on the seed. That's my entire program. People start copying that, and the price goes down. I'm coming after you, Born Horse. And then again, I guess the last thing that I do want to leave you with this slide here. Oh, this ain't gonna do it, is it? I'm not a statistician, but I would say that that's a fairly strong correlation, wouldn't you? As carbon dioxide levels raise, yield levels are raising with them. But yet we got city people that want to build a pipeline and put it 500 feet in the ground. You guys ever been into a greenhouse? You know what they normally operate their CO2 levels at? About 1,000 part per million. We were at 418, I think, this year is what the levels were. So think about that for a second. Think about this trajectory, and this is at 400, and greenhouses are at 1,000. Right? CO2 is needed for what?
Photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis. The more sugar you can create, you will win. I told a couple of these guys, I have to be back in Omaha at 6 p.m. for a rental car return. Otherwise, I don't have a plan. I'm going to hang around here. If you have some questions now, that's fine. But I will be here. You can find Buck just walked through. He's a wealth of knowledge. You can ask him, Matt, Corey, Dusty, Brad, Derek, Nate. Pick us, pull us to the side, ask us anything that you want to know. But I appreciate your time, and I'll turn it over to you, Bradley.
Yeah, thanks, Bodie. I haven't got an update on lunch, but again, thanks everybody for coming. It is here. Casey's giving me a thumbs up. So, grab some lunch. Thanks for coming, and thanks for sticking around. And hopefully, you gained a few key takeaways to take home, and at least try on a few places to make a couple changes and see what happens. And like Bodie said, we're all going to be sticking around a while, and feel free to grab us, and we'll do our best for you. Thank you.